don't know how long I'm supposed to do this for. Again, I've screwed up the entire order of class already. 7:15 break. We're supposed to be 7:30 to 7:45. All right, we'll get it taped down, and then I might give you a break a little bit early. But let's talk about taping it. You know what? We're not going to do that. We're good. But you're probably not going to get your break early. You might get it late. I've got to find my tape. There it is. All right, taping. First thing you're going to want to do, you're going to get the original drawing. Get that out of the way. Yay. All right. You're going to want to find some straight line to line up the drawing with. I'm probably going to use the property lines. I just hold the paper down, line that up. Yeah, they look to be about the same. So let's use that, which also kind of lines up with the road. So let's line it up that way, and then when we do that, and I'll bet folks need tape too, huh? Okay, I'm going to put up long pieces of tape, and you're going to take it and cut it into probably eighthsies, half. I might be able to get more than that out of this one, because you're going to need 8 pieces of tape. I'll put some up in a minute. But what you do, so get your drawing. When you tape on a board, what people want to do is, the first thing they do is they put the tape at an angle like that. Do not do that. All right, you think you're doing yourself a favor by making a nice secure fastening. You want to tape it straight across, and I just wiggled my drawing. Hang on a minute. Get it, hold it down, tape it kind of straight across. And the reason we do that is because of these bars, or T-square, or whatever you're using to draft with. If you have it at an angle, you think you're holding the paper better, but you're real likely to hit that corner, and you can kind of see what's happening already. And you do that about 50 times, and it will pick it right up and stick the tape underneath your drafting bar. So you're constantly fighting that. Whereas if it's straight on, it doesn't tend to catch the corners. So I've got some tape. Everybody line up. I'll give you a piece to cut into foursies. I'll be able to get 4 out of that. There you go. I'll try and cut it. Yeah, you'll have to work to get 4, but you'll be able to.
Is the bar supposed to be completely straight across?
Yeah, is yours not?
It is not.
I can fix that. Oh, you got it. Oh, yeah, all right, I see what you're doing. Excuse me, I'm going to have to come behind you a little bit. You jumped off the track. There's that. Now, just where you like it. Does that look pretty straight?
Looks pretty straight.
Okay, take this little screw, which should go over the wire. There. Put it on the wire. Tighten up that screw, and now it's not going to, it'll snap. It's got a little spring on it. So
Okay.
that should be straight. If your bar isn't straight, I can show you how to straighten it. Okay, everybody's getting taped down. So get the drawing taped down, and then I'll show you how to tape down the tracing paper, because there's some rules with that too. Rule 1 is find the tape.
It's like Christmas when you're wrapping presents.
Yeah, it's brutal, and I keep throwing stuff all over the place.
Were you carrying?
That's not, that's yours
Were
right
you
there.
carrying in your tape? This is mine, yeah.
Yep.
Did you walk over with it over there? No.
Who knows, but I got a backup plan. All right, well, hopefully my tape will show up at some point. All right, so when you go to tape your tracing paper down, and you should get used to doing this in general. If you notice, the tracing paper has a curl to it. Uncurl it, flip it over, curl side down, and it lays nice and flat on your drawing. Curl side up, and it just wants to do that. So curl side down, even it out. Okay, I'm going to put the bar kind of, I'll put it, I gotta get out of the way here. Come here. There we go. I'm just going to pull that over so the whole sheet's covered. I'm going to go ahead. I mean, it's not absolutely critical that it be straight with the bar, but I'm going to make it straight with the bar. Or close, that's pretty close. And then we're going to tape it down using the same rules as before, which is tape straight across. Okay, I'm using my fancy schmancy drafting tape. And there we go, and some people are going to need some tape. If anybody can find my blue tape, I'd be wicked happy.
Oh.
I'm wicked happy. Thank you.
No more red tape.
More red tape. This stuff is like $10 a roll. It's scary. It is a little thicker than the painter's tape, so I suppose that's. Go.
I honestly thought you were gonna like throw it for a second. Yeah, that's what I thought.
There you go.
Thank you.
Oh, want to give some? I'll give you some tape. Hang on.
I was like,
I'll
I'll
give you
get
some
it.
tape. Oh, is your bar open? You sure? All right. Let's, who needs tape? Nice. All right. I'm putting my tape back in my bag. So if everybody could remember that. So when I say, where's my tape, you can say, you put it back in the bag. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to, hang on just 1 second. And yes. Stay with it. I'm going to get you some oil over there.
I'm trying to be quiet.
That's what you can be, whatever you need to be.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Was there the little lever or something?
It's like a little lever.
Oh yeah, I can show you. You find it? There you go. All right. So where I am, I'm up on the assignment, and I'm supposed to go through this. I'm not going to do it right now. What is a plan view? In general, a plan view is just what you would look down at. Think of it like you're flying over the site in an airplane. and that's what you're looking down at. Google Maps, if you look at the area, satellite photography, that's kind of a plan view. All right, it's a plan section, that's about architectural drawings, don't worry about it. Plans are often used for construction purposes. This right here is a construction plan of, let's make that a little bigger. All right, so there's a construction plan, you know, and it's real good about letting you know where the tar has to go and what a paving detail is. You can kind of see where the building is, but some of these other features on the drawing seem more prominent than the building. Where I'm repairing the pavement here and here. So the construction plan is good for telling you how to build something. It's not great for showing someone to give them a feel for what the site is all about. And that's going to lead me to a presentation plan. All right, I'm sorry this is a little dark. It's the screen as much as anything. Now you can clearly see the building. You can see where the parking lot is. You can see the road. You can see water. You can see trees. So this is a presentation plan. The presentation plan, it helps the owner understand what the finished product is going to be. If they look at a construction drawing, it's going to be a little confusing to them, whereas this kind of gives them a sense what's going on. It also generates a little more excitement because it's pretty, so that people will be attracted to it and they'll get more interested in the project. Those are both of the same building, by the way. Let's see. Yeah, using hit. Trees. All right. Well, I'm going to talk about trees in a minute, about clumping trees, about how to make them. And those are my cheap trees. Here are some different trees, and again, we'll talk about trees because part of that, your assignment's part of that, your sketch part, the sketch part of your assignment. All right, how do I approach a site plan? First thing I do is I block out the roof of any structures as well as all hard-built edges. So what does that mean when I say, what do I mean when I say hard-built edges? Straight lines is what I mean. Straight lines or very uniform curved lines. I'm going to do that with some of my equipment. Yeah, that'll work. Now, I'm going to use a triangle. I'll have another one if I need it, if I can find it. There we go. All right, and someplace I'll have a pen. There's my pen. All right, first thing, oh, yeah, that's not gonna work. Let's do this. Screen mirroring, it says I am. Okay, I've got my triangle. The hard edges here are going to be the building. I've got an edge around the stone patio. I've got edges around my road. Those are the hard edges that come to mind. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remembering that I'm overlapping my corners. I'm going to draw, I'm just tracing, trying to make them straight as I can. I'm just doing the building at this point. Now I try and go in the same direction. A couple tips to remember. When you're when you're drawing with ink on your triangle, you want to make sure that the pen tip is pointed a little bit away from it as opposed to into it. because if you go into it, sometimes it'll make a blob. It'll suck the ink right out of your pen, especially with a new pen. You don't want to hold your pen like this. You want to keep it at an angle away from the triangle. Let's see if I can do that. So you want it like this, not like this. You'll learn the hard way. So I tend to go in one direction, and I tend to go from the top down and probably from the right to the left because I'm right-handed. So I'll do some lines here. I'm going to save the driveway for after because I've got to do things a little differently on that. Okay, so I've done it in one direction. I'm now going to come back and do it in the other direction.
So we're doing a house, but also the other straight lines, like the stone patio and the driveway, right?
I would just focus on the house. I'm doing the steps, but yeah, focus on the house for now. And we'll get to doing the stone patio and the driveway in a minute. Now, the reason I work from top to bottom and from left to right is, although these pens are pretty good, the thin ones are pretty good at not smearing. You can I can't really see it here, but dragging your equipment through freshly drawn ink can lead to smudges. With these fine point pens, they're not too bad about that. With the fat Sharpie, oh, it's evil. Now I'm just putting in these diagonals right here. Okay, so I've done step one. Let me see. If you want to follow along in your handout, you can. Block out the roof vent structures as well as all hard-built edges. Okay. So, next, now I'm going to do the stone patio. And I'm going to hold and change it up a little bit from what I wrote down. Okay. Where I've got just straight lines for my hard edges, I can put those in. But where it starts getting problematic is where I have a straight line coming into a curved line. For example, this road is going to be straight, but it's going to hit a curve here. It's straight, but it hits a curve. This is kind of straight, hits a curve. This is kind of curved and hits another curve. So the way I do this is the first thing I do is I freehand in with some dots my curves, and I try and do this as neatly as I possibly can. Put a dot there. Put a dot. So all I'm trying to do is just draw these curves. And I'm going to do them first. And leave a break there. I'll put a dot there. When I start, when it feels like I'm starting to lose it on the curve, just pick up your pen. Alright, I've got all the curves. I've got to do this front one. Done. don't be afraid to go a little slow on the curves. If you go real slow, you can probably get a nice one. Put some brakes in it. I put little brakes all over my curves. All right, so I've drawn all the curves. Now what I want to do is if I do a straight line, I can line up my ruler. I can put a dot there. And I can put the straight line in, and it looks like it's just meeting up with the curve. Because the reason I do that is if you try, if I have a curve and I've drawn it, and I try and make a line meet right up to it. I got pretty lucky on that one. But you can still see, if you look careful enough, there's a blob there. Because you just can't touch it exactly point to point, which is why I do, I'll use that professional dot. And they'll never really touch. And that way you don't see a blob where they touch. So I draw the curves first, and then I bring the straight lines to them. Often I'll put a dot, slide my triangle up to it. Hey, come on, get your pen to write. That's terrible. Okay, so now I've got my straight lines in, connecting to my curved lines, except for this one, which is just going to be difficult. There we go, that'll work. Next step was block out any curvilinear hard lines. We did that. Block out trees and plantings. So, trees. Let's talk about trees. I'm going to show you my cheap trees. Whenever you see trees touching one another, like we have all over here, I very rarely draw just a tree. It'll usually be a clump of trees, because that's kind of the way things usually work out. So these are usually shown in plan. You know, on a lot of your sketches, they'll just be circles. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the clumps, not the tree. All right? Not the individual tree, the clumps. We're going to go straight. We're going to go make our pen right. Straight line, W, W, straight line, W. And I'm going to do this all the way around the clump of trees. Notice I am not going around each full circle. I just want to do a clump. See that? It's around the clump. I didn't trace those lines. If you trace those lines, this does not work. So you want to go around the whole tree. Ultimately, I will then put a dot in the middle of each one. I will look for the biggest tree. I will put a couple quick column branches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6. Heck, 7's fine. So I do the biggest trees first. This one looks kind of big, but it's going to go under this one. I will put a couple branches close to one another and then a couple single ones. Notice they're hit-go-hit lines just because of the way my pen worked. I start off slow. I'm making them kind of irregular. I am overshooting the living daylights out of this. Alright, and now I've made a clump of trees. And if you were to erase those original lines, because you wouldn't see them if you're doing trace, that's kind of what the clump of trees looks like. That is my cheap tree. I explain it in the handout. That is what we're going to be doing on this. So the first thing I got to do is I got to go around all these trees and do my clumps. Well, I'm going to focus on some near the house. I don't know if I'm going to do them all, but let's see how this goes. Line W, line W. Now I'm going to do this for the fairly large trees. There are some smaller trees on the site plan, and I'll show you, I'm going to do those a little differently. And once you get rolling, you can cover a fair amount of ground fairly quickly. Make sure that you've got, just be loose and fast with it. It's going to lead to some overlaps and it's going to lead to some dots, and that's what you're looking for. And you can start to see those clumps coming out. And if you screw up a little like I just did, it doesn't matter because they're loose. They're not supposed to be perfect. Couple things you want to notice. I have some trees that go outside of my property line. You definitely want to try to incorporate that wherever you can. And you'll see where that comes in a little later on. Now I'm working, I'm going to start on my left and go to the right. Doesn't really matter as long as you don't drag your hand through your work. If you have a question, since I'm intently staring at the drawing, I wouldn't see you raise your hand, just shout it out.
The handout that you have is on Canvas?
Is on what?
Is it on Canvas?
Yes. Did anybody print it? It's it was class 2 or assignment 2.
Yeah.
It's in, it's part of the,
I just didn't see it yet, so I just wanted to make sure.
well,
That's a good idea.
did anybody print it out?
No, I didn't even print it.
Okay. Well, I've got 1.5. I might have. Is that 2? Here's 1. I need 1. I thought I had more than that. Here's another one. I did print out 2 or 3. So since you asked the question, I'll give you 1. Whoever said, you said first. There you go. So yeah, you should try and print these out before class. But you can follow along later on. Block out trees and plantings. All right, so I'm going to keep rolling on the trees. We'll try to. Okay, I think I've outlined, let's see if I'm wrong. Okay, I've outlined most of the big trees. Now what's left is these small ones next to the house. And I'm going to do those a little different. The larger ones here, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. See, I've got a large one, and I've got a clump of large ones here. 2, not really a clump. Got those 2, but I got these little ones around it. I'm going to use a different technique for the little ones. And all I'm doing is doing an upside down W, which some people would call an M. Right around the outside edge. That's fine. No. That's, please, feel free to come up. Way back, I used to make students stand where you're standing, and I'd do this. But we determined through student suggestion that it was better to have you guys work on the. Did I put it up on the screen and you could work on it too, as opposed to just sitting here for 45 minutes trying to look over my shoulder. So I've just done these little. The trees that I do here are just little. I'll make it bigger. W's, or M's. They look like little explosions. Okay, once I've got all my trees, the perimeter blocked out, and hopefully, this will work. Every now and then, if you have a scrap of white paper, you can slide it underneath between your trace and your drawing, and you can kind of see what we're getting. See the clumps, they're all together. But now the next thing I'm going to do, there's a tree line, put it in right now. Finished trees and planting. All right. Next step, so that's where I stop, I do that. My next step is to profile buildings and major items. What the profile is a fat line that's going around the perimeter of the roof only. Here, you will get in trouble. It's important that you keep the tip of your pen pointed away from the edge of your triangle. It's very important that if you start from the top and work your way down, you don't drag your triangle through a line. If you remember, I pointed out that the thin Sharpie pretty much dries. It's tough to make it smudge. I got a little smudge on that one. The fat Sharpie, however, makes a nice smudge. It takes a while to dry. So you want to go in one direction, give it a chance to dry, go in another direction, give it a chance to dry. So again, we're just doing the perimeter of the building. So I'm going to start on the outside edge. I love profile lines. Okay, I also love putting dots on profile lines. Just the perimeter. Now I'm going to make a mistake just to show you what happened. All right. Okay, I went in one direction. Oh dear, I didn't profile that line right there. Do not slide your triangle up to get to it. Give it a second. Let it breathe. Let it dry. Then gently place your triangle over it and go like so. Again, professional dot. I might have put another one in there. Now I have to let this dry because I'm going to come back at it with the other direction. So I let it dry. Sometimes it helps to wiggle your triangle over it and air it out. Okay, now hopefully it's dry enough. You can check it. I mean, you can. Yep, it's dry. Of course, if it wasn't dry, you'd be sad because you would have just made a smudge in the drawing. Remember to overlap those corners. Throw in a dot. Dots are your friend. Okay, so now I've done a profile line all around my building, and you're going to see in a minute. Cut it out. Get back in line. Notice the difference. See how much the building stands out versus all the other lines just from that profile line? Compare it to the roadways and things like that. Next step. Finish trees and plantings. Go around the perimeter with a W stroke, highlight trunk, and hint at branches. We've already done the going around the perimeter. So now what we did before, the first thing you're going to want to do is just put a dot, and it doesn't have to be much. I want you to put a dot in the center of each tree, roughly the center. You can just eyeball it. Your eye's actually very good at seeing where the center of circles is. Do we have any target shooters in the audience? Well, if you shoot rifle, they use a circular sight. And like in the Olympics when they're doing, I shoot pellet guns in my basement because you're never too old to have a happy childhood. But if you watch Olympic target shooters, what they're looking at is they have a round bullseye and they have a round aperture on their sight. And you can just, it's amazing how accurate they can tell just with a circle. Bow hunters, you got any bow hunters in here?
I was gonna say, I shoot a bow. so-
Okay, same idea.
We
You
have
got a
just
peep
a
and you
circle.
got the circle, and you can just, even without a stick or a rod to go on, if you said point with just that circle to hit the deer in that 10-inch spot,
Mhm.
you could do it very easily. Your eye is very good at it. So finding the middle of these isn't that hard. You'll just, and if you're off a little, it's not the end of the world, but you'd be surprised how accurate you can be. So do you bow hunt?
No, I don't hunt.
Okay, it's I don't. I shoot. Well, again, happy childhood. My daughter saw Brave. Remember the movie Brave?
Yes.
Yes, she was 5. She wanted a bow and arrow for Christmas. We got her a bow and arrow for Christmas. She played with it for about a day. Papa played with it a lot more. And a month later, Papa had a compound bow and had a little shooting place set up in the basement. And I now have 6 or 7 bows that I don't use much anymore. But it was a lot of fun. All right, I've put the dots in. Now I'm going to go ahead and put those branches in. I'm going to start near the building just because I don't know if I want to do them all, but I can. So remember to overlap. Go quick. It's as to how many branches to put in. I tend to do 6 or 7. I always try and do a couple close together, maybe 2 that are close together. But you want to be irregular with those too. If you make them too regular, they start looking like stars, and we don't want that. Okay, I'm doing the big trees first, and then I'll go back and do the smaller ones, because I want the big ones to be on top of the smaller ones. So when you've got a clump, look for the big ones. Big to small. When the big ones overlap a smaller one, I try to make it a point, and I'll see if I can give you a good example of this in a minute. Now, I don't know if you can notice it up there, but what happens is, because you're starting out from that dot, this is a good example. Look at the dot here compared to the dot that I started with. The dot that I started with you can barely see on the screen. That dot stands out because when you bring all these lines together, oops, I really didn't want to do that, but that's all right, it'll be okay. When you bring all these lines together, at that point, it makes a really nice trunk of the tree. Be loose, remember to overlap, hit, go, hit. And is anybody seeing that their pen is automatically doing hit, go, hit? Just because you're going, you start, you set the pen down in the middle, you're going slow, then you speed up, and then you stop towards the end. And it'll make a nice hit, go, hit line. Every time I do that, that's all right. always looking for those big trees. Once you get the big trees done, you can finish up the clump if you'd like. Ooh, I didn't put dots in the middle of my little M trees. All right, let's do this one. Looking for the big ones.
I feel like mine just started looking messy after this.
They started looking like what?
Like really messy.
It's you'll get to do it again for your sketch exercise. One of the things I ask you to do is do trees in plan view, and this is a tree in plan view. And you know, if you practice this, make a few clumps on your sketchbook page, lightly in pencil, you know, with some circles, and then go ahead and do this. You know, the more you do it, the easier it gets and the better they look. Half the battle is going kind of quick with it, and you folks probably aren't used to drawing real quick, so we're making a real distinct kind of instant line. And there's a fair amount of trees in this. I've done worse scenarios, but I've done whole forests. That was fun. I caution you that the front of the house has a little circular walkway that is not a tree. And I caution you because I almost made it a tree about 4 seconds ago. All right, I think I've got them all. Oh, nope, you always find, when you look it over, you'll find the ones you missed. All right, I put that in. Okay, I'm gonna do, the next step is double line edges. Go next to all hard surfaces with a W stroke creating a double line. So, much like we did with the tree where I went around the perimeter with a line, a W, a line, a W, I'm gonna go around all my hard edges, not all of them, I'm not gonna do those parts, you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to go around any place where the asphalt meets the dirt or the grass or whatever, around the stone patio, around the driveway. And I'm going to do it not around the building, by the way. So I do a line, I do a W, I do a line, I do a W, and I'm just doing this around and yes, please feel free to come up and look. So line W, line W, line W. Okay, I'm not going to do the very ends of the road because it's not, it doesn't really stop there. And it's kind of loosey-goosey, which is fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, I've gone around all the hard edges. Now one step that isn't, see that? Just kind of a line W right next to your hard edge. Now I've got all right, I've got some soft edges that haven't been defined yet. And I'm going to go ahead and do those. I'm going to use a lot of, I'm not going to do the line in the W per se. I'm going to go ahead and just trace that off. I'm going to be kind of irregular with it. I'm going to make sure I put a few dots in. And these are just the planting beds. And I'm going to do the same thing with the pond. So I just went around that one, just the plant, wherever it shows a planting bed, or a mulch bed, or whatever you'd like to call it. It's mulch, sorry, I've got it written down there. Notice on the drawing I have labels like mulch and pond and house and stone patio. You will not have those on your final drawing. Repeat, you will not have those on your final drawing. If you've done the drawing accurately enough, not accurately enough, but the idea is to make the graphics explain that there's something going on there. So you don't have to read anything to figure out there's a mulch bed around the trees. I'm going ahead and throwing all sorts of dots and breaks in this. But I'm trying not to be super regular. If my hand jitters a little in spots, that's good, because it's giving it a little character. I've gotten all the mulch beds. The last thing I'm going to do is just outline the pond. Again, I'm going to use a single line and just tracing that. Okay, I've outlined the pond, I've outlined all the mulch beds. What we got? I love doing this just to see how it's starting to come together. And it's starting to come together pretty nice. So, next step is add shadows to buildings and trees. All right, the shadow rule. In a perfect world, your shadows will always be down and to the right. All right, meaning the sun is coming from up and to the left. Now, what I've done, this is problematic in that if you'll notice, I've got a little north arrow here, and it points down on the page. That's not typical convention. Most maps that you look at, north is up, at which point the sun would be coming from the south, shining up on the building, and the shadows would be up and to either the left or right, depending if it's morning or afternoon. Why do we like the shadows down and to the right? It looks better, or it feels more comfortable, and the reason it does, I think, is because we grew up reading from the left to the right and at the top of the page and down. If you look at newspapers, those primitive things that people used to get the news from, when they did layout for a newspaper, what they would do is on the front page, this is where your most important story went, upper left-hand corner, because it's where everybody's eyes go to first. You then go, you put your second most important story down and to the right, because that's your eyes go to the top corner, your eyes go down to the next corner. You then go up top, and you then go down and to the left. So your eyes tend to travel in this direction, down and to the right. So if we put shadows there, it stops your eye from wandering off the page. So let's throw some shadows in. I'm going to do the easy ones. Well, they're not any easier or harder, but I'm going to do the trees first, and then I want to do the building. You know what, I'm going to do I would typically do the building first, and then I'd go back and do the trees. So I'm going to show you what happens. All I'm doing when I put a shadow on the building is I'm taking my fat Sharpie and I'm putting a couple lines on I'm just going down on any down sides and any to the right sides. So let me do the right first. Okay. Okay, I've just done every right side. I'm going to let it dry, especially since I did a double line there with my fat Sharpie. It's going to be juicy for a while. Now I'm going to do all the down sides. I want to be crisp with these shadows. I want them pretty distinct. Oops, see, I forgot, and I can sneak it in there because I'm really good. I'm not really that good, but. That one. All right, so I put a shadow down and to the right on the whole building. And it starts to lift it off the page a little bit. You can notice a difference with and without the shadows. I'm actually even going to put a little shadow on the chimney. Just a little single there. And because the roof is sloping, I'll make it go like this. There. And that makes the chimney start to pop off the roof. Now I'm going to do shadows on the trees. Trees, I don't need the straight edge, but I've got to remember to go down and to the right with my shadow. So I want you to watch. I'm going to do this clump of trees. I'm going to do a couple with, and I want you to compare them to the ones without. So let's do, all I'm doing is taking my fat Sharpie, and anything that's down, I put a shadow on it. Anything that's to the right, I put a shadow on it. Okay, let's do a few of these since we're here. And this, again, I'm just doing a single pass with my fat Sharpie. I can put some dots in there if I'm a little confused. That's to the left, so I'm not going to put a shadow there. Okay, I want you to notice the difference between, if you look at the page, compare these trees to these trees. Which ones are starting to come off the page? The shadow is real important. It lifts them right off the page and gives you some interest. And because you're looking, your eye tends to start looking up here, it comes down, it bumps into a shadow and stops. It comes down, it bumps into a shadow and stops and looks around before it journeys on. So it's helping guide your eye through the drawing and giving it some points of interest. Profile lines and shadows are some of the funnest things to do because they make such a difference in the drawing, and without taking a whole lot of time. I mean, it's a lot quicker than drawing all those branches, and it really makes the trees pop out. And let's look for where, and you always tend to forget some. The more you look, the more spots you'll find where you forgot them. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go back over here. So what directions do the shadows go? Oh, you can do this. Come on.
Bottom right.
Down and to the right. Now, again, if you've got, for example, if you had a client that was putting in a big solar array or was very, very focused on
I don't know what that
the
means.
sun.
If you like, I can search the web for. I was very, very focused on.
I'll bet you were. Okay. So, I mean, I've been known, I'll even have shadows. Typically, a shadow is on the north-facing side of stuff. But if I've got to have north up on the drawing, sometimes I'll show the shadows coming, like the sun's coming out of the northern sky. And I can argue that for 2 days a year on the solstice, it might actually do that a little bit. If the client is real excited about the way the sun works on their site, then either turn the drawing upside down and have north going down like I did here, or just show it accurately and have the shadows going up. But I think they'll be happier with it going down. All right, we've got shadows on the trees. We've got shadows on the buildings. What's our next step? Our next step is, all right, I'm going to actually switch a step. The next step is add texture. But I'm going to go ahead and reverse this. And instead of doing step 8, I'm going to go right to step 9, which is add a property line. And the reason is, I think you'll see what's going to happen when I do this. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. Now, do not put the property line through your trees. I do mine with a fat Sharpie. I do it with a straight edge. I do a line and a dot and a line and a dot. Kind of like I've drawn it freehand on here. Line, dot, line, dot. And this one, they can look kind of regular. Okay. But I do not go through the trees. I let the trees, I'm doing this backhanded and it's not going like I'd like. See, on this side, it's mainly trees, so you're not going to see a whole lot of property line. This side, I only see a little tiny section of it. The rest is all in trees, and I'm just going to leave it all in trees. The bottom, I'll get to see a fair amount of it. Dot, line, dot, line, dot. Stop at the tree. Okay, I've just put in the property line. Why did I do the property line? Well, next we're going to add texture, which is a real important part of what we're doing. But if time ran out on you, oh, I forgot part of my property line. Did I forget part of it? Nope, I didn't. All right. See how the trees hang out over the property line in spots? It adds some interest to the drawing and it sucks your eye into it. And if time ran out on you and you didn't get a chance to put in much texture, that kind of looks like a complete drawing. That's why I put the property line in. You'll notice a big difference in your drawing when you put the property line in. It frames it up nicely. But I do not do it through the trees because I don't want it to be too intrusive and make it look like you're looking through a window. All right, last step is going, well, second to the last step is going to be texture. Any idea of some textures we could use? What do I always use? Cheap grass. Okay. It fills up a lot of space quickly, which is real helpful. So let's go ahead, I'm gonna do them at, maybe like a 45-degree angle. Oops, just took one right through the pond. Notice I'm not being super regular with them, meaning let's make this one a little closer. And I blew it there, that it should have gone all the way to the road. There. I'll put a little sticking out. There's that one, that goes from the deck. All right, so I put lines down all through this. Now I'm going to go in the other direction. I'm going to do one. I'm going to do two close together. I'm going to do one. I'm going to do two. I'm going to do two. I'm going to do two here. I'm going to alternate. One. I'll put two there. Notice I'm overlapping the corners, overlapping the edges. I'm also alternating. I'd have one there, I'll put another one there. And I'll put one. And I'm gonna feather them off a little when I'm up here by just putting a couple dots in so they kind of dribble off the page. Got a little scared there, kind of lost my way. Now there are different ways to texture grass. Ultimately, we're going to be coloring this. So, you know, the easiest way to texture grass is to make it green. But if you're doing, you know, a black and white drawing, you don't want all this white space in there. You're trying to establish some kind of gray space with a black pen. And this is one way of doing it. Throw in a few dots here and there if you're feeling Okay, here I'm gonna do. I'm carrying a couple little ones. All right, I think I've dotted the living daylights, grasped the living daylights out of it. So that's my first texture. Next textures that I would think about would be the asphalt on the paving. Okay, you start to see where that's looking a little bit more like there's something going. It's not all white. So I've got a stone deck, stone patio. I've got the pond, I've got the asphalt, I've got the sidewalk. Let's do the sidewalk first. Sidewalk's pretty easy because I'm going to assume it's concrete and we're going to put a grid in it. So I'm just going to draw a couple lines like so. I'm going to do the same thing here. I want it to be fast and loose. These texture lines, I want, again, don't be afraid to move your pen kind of quickly on it. So I just put a grid on the sidewalk. For the driveway and the road, I tend to stipple, but I don't stipple very much. So rule of thumb with a lot of texture and with stippling and things like that is aim for the corners. So I'm going to put a circle and a couple dots in the corner of the driveway. A circle, a dot, a circle, and a couple dots. Let's look over here. Circle, couple dots. Here's another corner. Put a circle, put 3 or 4 dots, kind of randomly spaced. We don't want to put this over the whole driveway, over the whole road, because it'll look like it has 5 o'clock shadow. So we just aim for the corners, put a couple dots in there, someplace in the middle. Put a couple dots here. And when in doubt, stop. Okay, or else you'll wind up putting in way too many. For the stone patio, I'm going to lay down a bit of a stone texture, but I'm just going to do the corners and some of the edges. So I'm not 100% sure how I want to do this. I could do it like this. And just do some circles and just kind of bump them. I could do, but there's a key to either one of these. I got enough circles going on in this. I think I'm going to do rectangles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and quickly draw a rectangle, and then one next to it, one next to it. I'm kind of alternating these. I'm making them different sizes, but I'm going to feather it off. Meaning, I don't want a real distinct line on it. I've aimed for the corners. And then I'm just going to put some dots in to kind of hint. Because if I did the whole thing in stones, it would look too strong on the drawing. But if I hinted a few stones, all of a sudden it gets the point across. I'm not stuck drawing stones forever. And I mean, I'll put a couple here, why not? Again, when in doubt, stop. I would not put any texture on the pond. I used to put squiggles and circles and stuff in. We did on the drawing last week. I'm not going to here. Ultimately, you're going to want to put color on this. When it's time to put color on, color the water blue. I'll show you how to do that. It'll stand out like water. So I would.
Are we gonna be doing any of these on the computers?
Very possibly. Well, for some of the coloring. We won't be doing any of the drawing. The drawing we'll do by hand. We might be doing some of the coloring on the computer. We will be scanning it and titling it on the computer, but we may do some tonight. We will see. Next, what have I got missing? I'm going to go back to my list and see where we were. Add texture. This, in the handout, it says add roof texture. I would not add roof texture. Add a property line, we already did that. Title and label your drawing. No, we're not going to title and label it because you're going to do that in the computer. So cross that out, but indicate a north arrow, add a graphic scale. Well, we've got a north arrow on there. I like that. I do those with a circle template. I might want to make it a little bigger, but let's not get carried away. Yeah. So I love my simple north arrow, but when you do, if you're going to use a circle template to trace circles, make sure the pen is straight up and down when you're doing it, or they will look like little eggs. And I already missed a spot there. Wrong size. There we go. I'll just put a little bit right there and see if I can fix it. Now, almost. I then cut the circle in half with a straight line. I can then just make an arrow. There are a bunch of north arrows you can use. I like the simple ones the best. For the graphic scale, I've already given you one on here, so we're basically just going to trace this. We're going to make it look a little nicer. Okay, and what I do is I put a couple lines down here. And then just put a bottom line on that. Do not put any letters on that. Again, any titling, any words you want to put on this, we're going to be doing on the computer ultimately, because it just looks way better. All right, I'm going to call that done. I'm going to slide a white piece of paper underneath it so we can see if I missed anything. Let me see if I can find a big piece of blank white paper. Here we go. I think that reads kind of nice. It's a nice little ink drawing. It's both of these are getting the point across, but I think a client would be more excited about that one than this one. I'm going to stop recording.